After all, I am your biggest fan. Am I good enough now? Who's super now? I'm Syndrome!
I have been playing Kingdom Hearts since the very beginning. When my siblings rented Kingdom Hearts 1 from Blockbuster Video in 2002, that was the start of a long 19-year journey in the Kingdom Hearts universe. Over the years, there have been several new installments since the original release for the PlayStation 2, remakes of older games, palette changes of Heartless, and new cutscenes that were not included in the original game. This only added a richer feeling to the magic that made the original game so special. But I cannot ignore that over the past 19 years, there have been some plot points that have either been overlooked or straight out omitted from the newer remakes of Kingdom Hearts, causing newer players to the series to be unaware of important content that was originally in the older playable games, but for one reason or another is not found anywhere in the PS4 release of Kingdom Hearts: The Complete Set. Here are 10 major omissions from the Kingdom Hearts series. The most recent Final Fantasy character in a Kingdom Hearts game to date is Zack Fair, who appears exclusively in Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. From Dream Drop Distance to Kingdom Hearts 3 to the conclusion of Union Cross, Final Fantasy characters have been noticeably absent from appearing a single time in the entire game. While I love Moogles, we are not counting them. While Dream Drop Distance was given a pass with the introduction of characters from The World Ends With You, the newer games following have less of an excuse. Kingdom Hearts 3 introduced no new Final Fantasy characters, and Cypher gets mentioned once by an NPC. While this is not so much any content that was omitted, it is a piece of the puzzle that made Kingdom Hearts so magical. This is more of an addition rather than an omission, but Zexion was originally intended on being a non-fighter with no weapon, as the original fight between him and Riku was only a cinematic. This went smoothly until his so-called weapon was to show up in the Kingdom Hearts 2 area in the Proof of Existence as destroyed. To compensate, his weapon was conveniently blurred out in a way that makes it look like tiles off the floor were ripped off. The first time ever fighting Zexion wouldn't be until Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, which was released exclusively in Japan. That fight would later be modified and then added to the remake of Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, which was released for the PlayStation 2 in 2007 and 2008. Zexion's official weapon became his spellbook. Moogles have an iconic legacy within the Final Fantasy universe, and they have also left a heavy mark on the Kingdom Hearts universe as well. But something that many of us have forgotten or simply did not experience was that the Moogles in 358 over 2 days all wore black coats. This was an incredible unique feature exclusive to Days, and it's unfortunate that the cinematic remake did not feature them even for a second. Not only have they basically invented holographic technology by the time Kingdom Hearts 2 takes place, where they can literally work from home while still doing business with the Keyblade Master, but apparently they also adjust their work uniforms to make their target customers feel like they can relate to them more. Because, well, let's face it, Roxas would just never do business with a Moogle if he wasn't in a sexy black coat. This is a cameo at best, but come on, it was a funny comment nonetheless. When I went back and I played Days, I just had to include this scene because it just shows how dedicated the Moogles are in keeping their businesses alive and well, even if it means helping a traitor.
But the temple imprisoned him for helping traitors. Don't worry about me, just go help Lady Una.
This wasn't a plot point so much as it was a disappointment. As Days was remade into a non-playable game, that obviously meant that mission mode and multiplayer mode would also be omitted from this game. In the DS version of 358 over 2 days, every member of the original Organization 13 were playable characters, as well as people like Riku, King Mickey, and even Sora. This was the first time fan-favorite characters such as Axel and Xion could be used by the player. What's more was the multiplayer mode allowed friends to play and spar against each other with whatever character they wanted. I've personally only been able to play multiplayer mode once on this game, but it was the best 2 hours I've ever spent playing Days. I would love to see more of this as Kingdom Hearts expands in the future. This is a really disappointing fact about Birth by Sleep. In the secret ending of Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, 5 new characters are introduced, with 2 of them having familiar faces. Part of what made this 5-minute cutscene so incredible was the armor these Keyblade wielders were wearing. By the time Birth by Sleep was released for the PlayStation Portable in 2010, a change was made to the Birth by Sleep trio. Their capes were removed. The backstory behind this is rather underwhelming. According to Square Enix at the time, the capes were removed because of lags during multiplayer mode, as cloth on the PSP was difficult to pull off with that much user input, and for other reasons. For that reason, the capes were removed, thus affecting the clash at the Keyblade Graveyard. The problem here is that the lags would not start occurring until 4 or more players joined the same room with no major issues of 3 or fewer players. Furthermore, the only place in the entire game where multiplayer mode was even an option was in the Mirage Arena. Even worse, Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep was the least played Kingdom Hearts game before the remakes because it was the lone Kingdom Hearts game for the PSP platform, causing most people to have to buy a new system just to play it. All of this sets us up to this predicament. Very few people played this game in comparison to the other games, and those who did, myself included, would have been very unlikely to discover this lag in the first place. The original Mirage Arena could host up to 6 players, so instead of cutting the number in half, Nomura decided to remove the capes. Now I'm just going to say this once. I have never come across another person that played Birth by Sleep that also had the means to play multiplayer mode, and if I did, we never had our PSPs on us at exactly the same time to actually be able to pull this off. It's a little sad to me that something so cool as capes were removed because of the statistical impossibility that 4 of the 6 people would be a little annoyed by a little bit of lag.
No capes!
When you have 6 players, at that point you might as well split off into 2 groups of 3 and fight Villain's Vendetta that way. I did it all by myself, as most of us probably did, but at the end of the day, this was just a huge missed opportunity on Nomura's part. Okay, so this is getting into theory here, but with the recent trend going around for the past year or so that Demyx might maybe be the Master of Masters, I did notice something awfully convenient during my last playthrough of Days. One time this is featured in the cinematic remake, where Demyx and Xigbar are sitting together, but if you go through and actually play Days, there's an unusually high number of times where Demyx and Xigbar are sitting at the same table. Now note that many could just argue that this is a coincidence, but in the storytelling world, as well as in theater and in Hollywood, you'll find this all over the place. It's actually safer to assume that consistent patterns of behavior and setting were actually put there on purpose, rather than to assume that Nomura forgot to bring his pot into work and got lazy and just copied and pasted the same thing for 20 to 30 different days. If Xigbar, being Luxu, didn't know what the Master of Masters was doing or where he was, it could be said, perhaps, that Demyx maybe decided to befriend Xigbar knowing his true identity, even while Xigbar didn't necessarily know about his. It's just a thought, but it's an interesting one at that. Okay, so everyone's definition of swearing is different, but it's still great to see a word like hell get used in a Kingdom Hearts game. When playing Rechain of Memories for the first time, I was waiting desperately to hear Axel say hell. And then I was super disappointed to find out his lines during that scene were completely rescripted. In Chain of Memories, it was rather surprising the first time playing through, and since the Game Boy Advance isn't coming back anytime soon, this is a scene that most Kingdom Hearts fans won't get to experience. Okay, so everyone knows that Roxas quote-unquote defeated Riku prior to their match at the end of days. I mean, Roxas even says it himself in Kingdom Hearts 2 right in front of Sora to his face. But even in the playable version of the game, their first fight was just a game of tag while Riku pretends to hold Shion captive. Not much of a fight if you ask me. What I would really like to see is how their first fight actually turned out, and whether or not Riku actually put up a fight and didn't just pull a Demyx and run away at the first sign of trouble. Speaking of Roxas versus Riku, there's another fight involving Roxas, and that is going to round us up at number 1 today. This scene is by far the most iconic scene in Kingdom Hearts that nobody knows about. After nearly an entire year of taking orders from Saïx, Roxas flees the castle and one-shots any and all nobodies that attack him on his way out. Just before reaching the exit, Saïx is there waiting for him and exclaims, "We don't accept resignations." For the first time, Roxas stands up to Saïx and speaks his mind, saying, "I have nothing to say to you." Saïx then challenges Roxas to a fight, where Roxas wins out, leaving Saïx on his knees. This scene was one of my favorite scenes from the entire Kingdom Hearts franchise, because unlike Sora, who just beats people for the sake of them being the bad guy, Roxas got to flee the castle, and he got a piece of Saïx in the process. While I never advocate for revenge, I always thought it was a bit low that Terra was never able to put Xehanort in his place, even though Terra deserved every opportunity to deliver the final blow onto Xehanort after all the abuse he put him through. Sora had little to no relationship with Xehanort whatsoever, and almost every other character wanted a bigger piece of Xehanort than Sora did. Now, perhaps one could argue that that alone was the reason why it should have been Sora, so that his personal feelings wouldn't cloud his judgment on how to best dispose of Xehanort, but in any case, there was nothing more satisfying to me than being able to put Saïx in his place while Roxas pursues his journey to uncover who he is. It is a very iconic scene, and I was extremely disappointed when I discovered it was not featured in the cinematic remake. Thank you so much for sticking around for this video. What are your thoughts? Are there any omissions from the Kingdom Hearts series that you think should have been included in the remakes? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments, and please, if you want to keep in touch for more future content, feel free to hit the subscribe button and leave a like. You guys are so amazing. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.